First at 9, this Thursday, the 5th of September 2024. New Alliance. Podujana Eksat Nidahas Peramuna formed under the leadership of PM Dinesh Gunawardena to support the President. Be mindful. The President urges UNP supporters to vote for him instead of voting for Premadasa, which he describes as indirect support to Anura Kumara Dissanayaka. Election stage. Sajit Premadasa unveils Blueprint 3.0. Anura vows to dissolve Parliament following his election to the office of President. Namal aims to strengthen the state sector. Dilith calls on the public to trust his alliance. With immediate effect, 4 state ministers representing the SLPP removed from their portfolios.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසින් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Derana First at 9. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. Postal voting for the 2024 presidential election continued for the second day today. The second day of postal voting was reserved for members of the armed forces and employees of all other government institutions to mark their postal ballots. Postal voting will continue tomorrow as well, with the 11th and 12th of September being allocated as additional dates. Postal voting for the 2024 presidential election continued for the second day today. A total of 712,319 government employees are eligible to cast postal votes in this year's election. Today and tomorrow have been reserved for members of the armed forces and employees of all other government institutions to mark their postal ballots. Marking of ballots took place from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Postal voters who were unable to cast their votes on the initial dates can do so on the 11th and 12th of September at the district election office of the district in which their workplace is located. Meanwhile, the Election Commission commented on the legality of election promotional material being displayed on vehicles.
දකින්න පාරිශුද්ධ කරගහගෙන යන දේශපාලන පක්ෂ කණ්ඩායම් වල මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉදිරියේදී නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න කොහොමද සූදානම් වන්නේ?
පෙරේදා අපි මනම්පිටිය
The day before yesterday, posters weighing 50 kilograms along with a set of vehicles were apprehended. The police department is taking the necessary legal actions in this regard. By displaying promotional material, the candidates are only conveying their uncertainty about the outcome of the election to the voters.
Meanwhile, the Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of election operations, Asanga Karavita, issued an order stipulating that all election promotional material displayed on three-wheelers be removed.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
While highlighting that Sajit Premadasa no longer represents the UNP, independent presidential candidate President Ranil Wickremesinghe called on the supporters of the United National Party to vote for him instead of for Sajit Premadasa, adding that voting for Premadasa is providing indirect support to Anura Kumara Dissanayaka. He also called on the public to vote for him to avoid shortages of essential items and unemployment in the future. An election campaign rally under the theme Puluwan Sri Lanka, pledging support to President Ranil Wickremesinghe, was held this afternoon in Matugama.
අනිකුත් දේශපාලන පක්ෂවල ඉන්න
We are well aware of the pedigree of other leaders. That is why we decided to support President Wickremesinghe. He possesses the necessary experience, international connections, and most importantly, the willingness to revive this country and its people.
මේ රටේ ජනතාවවත් ගොඩනගන්න ඕන කියලා ඔබේ ගමේ ඉන්න අයව දැනුවත් කරන්න.
Tell your neighbours that they must decide whether to allow the country to progress along the current path or to allow it to fall back into an era of queues. Then ask them to vote for the symbol gas cylinder on the 21st and make Ranil Wickremesinghe victorious if they want their future to be positive.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහව දිනවන්න කියන එක ඉල්ලමින් ඔබට ජය වේවා.
දැන් මගෙන් අහනවා කවුද ටීම් එක කියලා. මේ ඡන්දේ දිනේ ටීම් තෝරන්න නෙමෙයි ජනාධිපති තෝරන්න.
I have been asked who my team is. However, the election is being held to elect the president, not to select the best team. What you must ask yourselves is who can become the best president. I do not understand this obsession with teams. If you feel I am the best candidate, then vote for me. When I assumed power, I worked with the team I was given. Ranjit Siambalapitiya and Shehan Semasinghe were the state ministers of finance. Didn't they perform their duties admirably? Now let's look at this JB. What is the state of their team? They haven't been able to present a single election manifesto. They have presented two manifestos. One mentions Win for All, where the other is Blueprint 3. That is because they have two factions internally. One faction is led by GLPDs and Nalaka Godeheva. The other faction is led by Iran, Harsha and Kabir. They have no clear path. Are we going to vote for such people? What did the opposition leader do? All of us know that a battle is always between two contestants. However, as the opposition leader, Sajit Premadasa allowed Anura Kumara to rise to prominence. Sajit Premadasa cannot defeat Anura Kumara. There are supporters of the UNP here. Some UNP supporters voted for the SJB due to the parliamentarians who represent them. Sajit is incapable. He does not represent the UNP. It is me who is doing that. There is no point in voting for Sajit Premadasa. Voting for Sajit is providing indirect support to Anura Kumara Dissanayake. Please cast your vote for the symbol gas cylinder. Failing to do so will result in gas shortages and unemployment.
gas cylinder එක ළඟ කැතිරි ගැහුවේ නැත්තම් gas උත් නැහැ රැකියත් නැහැ.
Meanwhile, the new political alliance, Podujana Eksat Nidahas Peramuna, formed by parliamentarians that have pledged their support for President Ranil Wickremesinghe ahead of the presidential election, was unveiled earlier today. The new alliance's General Secretary, Minister Dr. Ramesh Patirana, stated that the alliance was formed with the intention of providing the necessary leadership to overcome the political challenges faced by Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the alliance's leader, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, emphasized that the alliance will protect its members from any negative repercussions that may arise due to their support for President Wickremesinghe. The new political alliance, formed by the group of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarians who pledged their support to President Ranil Wickremesinghe ahead of the presidential election, in conjunction with several other political groups supporting the incumbent president, was unveiled in Battaramulla earlier this morning. Chairman of the United National Party Vajira Bewardena and Chairman of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva also attended the event. Named Podujana Eksat Nidahas Peramuna, the alliance will use the trophy as its symbol. The alliance will be led by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, while Minister Dr. Ramesh Patirana has been appointed as the General Secretary.
වර්තමානයේ අවකාශය තුල තුන්වැදෑරුම් දේශපාලන අවශ්‍යතාවයක් තිබෙනවා.
Currently, there are three political challenges. On one hand, political groups that spread hatred and threaten democracy are beginning to rear their heads. On the other hand, there are other political groups that issue unrealistic promises to the people. Thirdly, Sri Lanka is currently facing a geopolitical threat. The anti-democratic struggle that was conducted through foreign intervention was a result of that threat. The leadership required to defeat all three of these threats will be provided through this new alliance. We intend to contest all future election in Sri Lanka.
ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ සියලුම මැතිවරණ වලට තරඟ කරන බවත් අමිතාම් විශ්වාසයෙන් සඳහන් කරනවා.
Member parties of Podujana Eksat Nidahas Peramuna, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Mahajana Eksat Peramuna, United People's Party, Elam People's Democratic Party, Tamil Makkal Vaiduttalai Pulikkal, the National Congress, Eksat Janata Paksha, the National Unity Alliance and Deshapremi Janata Balawegaya signed the agreement establishing the new alliance.
අත්සන් තබන ගෞරවාන්විත සුබ මොහොතයි එළඹෙන්නේ ඔබේ අත්බල සන්නාදය ආශිර්වාදයේ අත්බල සන්නාදය මැද්දේ අපි මේ ආරම්භන්නේ පොදු ජන එක්සත් නිදහස් පෙරමුණ.
Ranil Wickremesinghe මැතිතුමා ජනාධිපති වරණේ ජයග්‍රහණයට.
While working towards Ranil Wickremesinghe's victory in the presidential election, despite knowing that parliament will be dissolved in the near future, we were able to come together and create this alliance which will provide progressive nationalist powers an opportunity to unite. This will mark the beginning of a new chapter in Sri Lankan history. We promise all our provincial and local government representatives and parliamentarians that despite whatever threats you might receive, this alliance will protect you from any such punishment.
අපි බිහි කළ මේ පෙරමුණ ඔබට කිසි දඬුවමකට පත් වෙන්න ඉඩ තියන්නේ නැහැ කියන ප්‍රමාණව ඉතාම වගකීමෙන් අපි කියනවා.
Presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Anura Kumara reiterated his promise to dissolve Parliament immediately if elected to the office of President. Addressing an election rally in Jayara, the NPP leader highlighted that there are three options on how the country can be governed until a new Parliament can be elected. Dissanayake added that whichever option is implemented, the NPP will conduct the interim government in a constitutional manner. Another election rally pledging support to the leader and presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Anura Kumara was held in Jayara last evening.
අපි සහතික වෙනවා මාලිමාවේ පාලනය ආපු විගසම.
We assure you that once Anura Kumara Dissanayake is elected president and an NPP-led government comes into power, we will dissolve the current corrupt parliament and establish a new regime. This new parliament will be comprised of knowledgeable individuals who have entered politics out of dedication to their country and who are equipped to effectively address the crisis. And that parliament will be a NPP-led parliament.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව මාලිමාවේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවක් බවට පත් වෙනවා. දැන් එතකොට කෝ 2020 ජනවරම ඒක අහෝසි. ඒ නිසා ජාතික ජනබලවේගයේ ආණ්ඩුව ආරම්භයේදීම මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු විසිරුවා හරිනවා.
The people's mandate given in 2020 is now void. Therefore, the NPP will begin by dissolving parliament. Then the question is, what will happen to the cabinet until a new parliament can be elected? We will govern the country during that interim period in a constitutional manner. Once I'm elected president, my parliamentary seat will be transferred to another member of our party. With a team of 4 members, including myself, we will form the cabinet as stipulated by the Constitution. If this arrangement is not acceptable, the Constitution grants the President the authority to take all ministerial portfolios under his purview. If that too is unacceptable, we can establish a caretaker government. There are 3 options available. After Parliament is dissolved, the NPP will govern the country constitutionally until a new Parliament can be elected. Keep in mind that 2/3 of the current parliamentarians will not be elected to the next Parliament.
මම අද ජයලද කියන්න මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ඉන්න മന്ത്രിවරුන්ගෙන් 3න් 2ක් ඊළඟ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ නැහැ.
While highlighting that the Sammagu Jana Balawege possesses the most suitable team that can better handle the Sri Lankan economy, opposition leader Sajit Premadasa says that his alliance is committed to creating robust engines of economic growth. Addressing the event to unveil the alliance's Blueprint 3.0, the opposition leader assured that he will achieve inclusive growth and shared prosperity if elected to the office of president.
The Blueprint 3.0 of the presidential candidate of the Sammagu Jana Sandhanaya, opposition leader Sajit Premadasa, themed towards an advanced social market economy, was launched in Colombo last evening.
We are an independent country, but we are a small island next to the Indian subcontinent. Our foreign policy will never threaten India's defense in any way. But our foreign policy is such that we will invite investment from any source if investment comes. We want to make sure that we have an open platform, a transparent platform, that investors could come from anywhere and work with our businesses. When people come and ask me, Iran, what's the biggest problem in this country? I never say it's the economy. This is so small, it can be put right. The biggest problem I say in this country is the rule of law. That is the biggest issue. If the rule of law is working and every citizen feels that they are equal, the law applies equally, that they have dignity, we can fix the economy.
When yesterday I heard, or rather I read in the night, our competitors' economic plan, and in fact the leader of their party spoke to many of you perhaps who would have been there yesterday, said, look, we can change the DSA because the Chamber of Commerce says that Sri Lanka's GDP growth might be 6.5% as opposed to 3.1% that the IMF has forecasted. Well, if the IMF is going to agree to the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce assessment that we will create 6.5% GDP, so be it. But let me tell you, that's not going to happen. So to mess around with the base document on which our entire program is structured on is a dangerous thing. And it's an irresponsible thing. Then what will happen? Think about the danger of trying to create a different foundation when we say that there are certain limits within which we can negotiate this agreement with the IMF. There are limits within which we can negotiate and renegotiate with the creditors. It is not as if we can say, we will pay it when we can, and they will say, okay, no problem. That's not how the world works. So let us be very, very careful in not being fooled by certain people who say that they can change the whole thing.
In 1980s, there were Japanese companies like Toyota, Mazda and Honda, along with other international investors who came in to set up factories in Sri Lanka. But the JVP protested and they disrupted the economy at that time, and all these companies left Sri Lanka and went away, and they invested in Thailand and in Malaysia. And the automobile industry has grown in those countries. That was the opportunity that we missed. Calculate this and see. In the global value chain, when you look, the intermediary accessories production, the industrial production, including vehicles and vehicle spare parts, is one of the main components of exports in the world today. If you look at it as a percentage of total exports, because we lost that opportunity. Thailand exports 48% of their exports in intermediary products and accessories like that, and in the automobile industry. Malaysia exports 42%, and Sri Lanka still stands at 5%. So you can see the missed opportunities.
We stand firm in our integrity, and we urge you, especially in the business community, to think rationally. We simply don't have the luxury of time. Time is not on our side, and we cannot experiment. This is a time to embark on a time-tested vision backed up by a superlative team that will make sure that we walk the talk. We promise to create robust engines of growth, promise serious structural reforms, and we will ensure inclusive growth and shared prosperity.
Meanwhile, presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Nal Rajapaksha, reiterated that he will not issue unrealistic election promises and will only propose policies that he is confident of being able to implement if elected to the office of president. Addressing a gathering in Dehiwala, Rajapaksha emphasised that he intends to follow former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's example by expanding the state sector with a strategic program if elected to office. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna's Mavanala electorate meeting pledging support to the party's presidential candidate Nal Rajapaksha was held last evening. Before voting, consider what is best for the country. Let's evaluate which of the four leading candidates is the true patriot. Ranil, who claimed that anyone can fight wars, had Sajit as his deputy leader. Anura attempted to collaborate with both of them to defeat our budget proposal. Among these four presidential candidates, only one stands out as a true patriot, and that is Nal Rajapaksha, who will be elected as the 9th executive president.
අපේ රටට ගැලපෙන ප්‍රායෝගිකව මේ මහ පොළවේ
යථාර්ථයක් බවට පත් කරන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රතිපත්ති නිසා
We only propose policies that are practical and avoid making promises that cannot be realistically fulfilled. We firmly believe that the state sector needs strengthening. As postal voting approached, salaries were increased and public servants were praised. However, we have seen how some politicians treated state sector employees previously. Nal Rajapaksha was a person who expanded the state sector, and he achieved this not through political power but through vision and a strategic program. His efforts included developing provincial councils, airports, hospitals and integrating graduates into the government sector. However, this program was completely dismantled in 2015. As we form a government, we will avoid passing bills that are detrimental to the country. We will not allow any party to divide this nation. We will implement a program focused on the country's development.
Meanwhile, a memorandum of understanding was signed at the Sri Lanka Foundation Institute today between Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party's constituency organisers who will endorse Nal Rajapaksha for the forthcoming presidential election. Meanwhile, Sarva Janabale presidential candidate Dilith Jayara emphasised his commitment to nationalist politics. He asserted that his alliance's approach represents the politics of heroism and will mark the beginning of what he described as real politics in Sri Lanka. A meeting was held this morning between the Power organisation and Sarva Janabale presidential candidate Dilith Jayara. During the meeting, appointment letters were issued to district and provincial organisers of the Maubima Janata Party.
මේ රට ගොඩ ගන්න දර්ශනය අහිංසක දුප්පත් ජනතාව නගා හිටවන වැඩපිළිවෙල මෙතුමා ගා තියෙන නිසා ඊගාට හොඳ බුද්ධිමතෙක් උගතෙක් නිසා ඉදිරි දැක්මක් ඇති නායකයෙක් නිසා මෙතුමාට උදව් කරන්න කටයුතු කළේ අන්නේ දර්ශනය. අද දේශපාලනයේ යෙදෙන
It seems that most political leaders are against nationalism. We are the true political camp that represent nationalism. We will pursue nationalistic politics in Sri Lanka. This is the politics of heroism. The real politics in Sri Lanka will begin when we enter the political arena.
නියම දේශපාලනය ආරම්භ වෙන්නේ මේ අපේ ආගමනයත් එක්ක කියලා.
Meanwhile, another rally in support of Dilith Jayara was held in Casbah today.
All the main presidential candidates have issued manifestos, but not a single statement within them provides meaningful changes to your lives. They continue to engage in politics that deceive you. President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who claims to have taken over leadership because others refuse to accept responsibility, has increased gas and electricity prices fourfold. Gas consumption has decreased by 40%. If you vote for the current administration, this third world country will descend into further turmoil.
Star dishwasher Dali Hell Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher Magic Tapika.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Chandurusune Kaget Manape Siga TV. Siga TV සඳහා සුපිරි deal.
Welcome back. Now here's a look at more of the latest developments in the political front ahead of the presidential polls.
පාකිස්තානයේ රට ගොඩනගන්න පුළුවන් නායකයෙක් ආවා ඉම්රාන් ખાન කරන්න දුන්නද රට මුළුමනින්ම ස්ථාවර කරා අපිට අත්හදා බලන්න ආපහු නම් වෙලාවක් අපි නිවැරදි තීන්දුව මේ අවස්ථාවේ ගත්තේ නැත්නම් අපේ රටට අනාගතයක් නැහැ
ඔබතුමාලගේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශනයේ අපි දැක්කා මේ හමුදාව ස්වභාවිකව ඉවත් කරනවායි කියලා මොකද්ද මේ
නෑ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ලෝකයේ දියුණු රටවල් වල යුද්ධෙන් පස්සේ සමුදා සමාජිකයන්ව නොයෙකුත් විශ්වවිද්‍යාලවල වලට නොයෙකුත් අධ්‍යාපනික ආයතන වලට සම්බන්ධ කරලා ඔවුන්ව ඒ අදාළ ශාස්ත්‍ර වලට උදාහරණයක්. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒක තමයි අපේ අර්ථය.
මාලිමාව ජයග්‍රහණය කරාට පස්සේ මාසේ කාමාරකින් එනවා පාර්ලිමේන්තු ඡන්දයක් මේගොල්ලෝ දේශපාලනය කරන්න එන්නේ නැහැ. ඇයි? විශ්‍රාමයට අවශ්‍ය කරනවා. වරප්‍රසාද ඔක්කොම අවශ්‍ය කරනවා. හොරකම් වංචා දූෂණය කරන්න ඉඩක් නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට දේශපාලනය කරන්න ඇවිල්ලා වැඩක් නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ ඔක්කොම එකතු වුණේ නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලෝ ඉවරයි.
දැන් කියනවනේ මේ ජාතික ජන බලවේගයේ වටේ මාර බුද්ධිමතුන් තෝගයක් එකතු වෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඒ බුද්ධිමතුන් තමයි දැන් මේ රට හදන්නේ කියලා කියනවා. ලංකාවේ බුද්ධිමතුන් කියලා ඉන්න අය කොච්චර පුංචි මිනිස්සුද? ඒගොල්ලන්ට පොළව ගැන, භූමිය ගැන, ජනතාව ගැන මොනතරම් අසංවේදීද ඒගොල්ලෝ කියන එක සම්බන්ධ ලොකු නිදර්ශනයක් මේක ගෝඨ වියත්මක 2 වෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා.
හරි නායකයෙක් රට ගන්නේ නැතුව රට වැටුණා නම් වෙන දේ දැන් බංග්ලාදේශේ පේනවා. දැන් බංග්ලාදේශේ අරාජක වෙලා, අස්ථාවර වෙලා, රටේ කෙනෙක් නැතුව පිටරටක පදිංචි ප්‍රවීණ පුද්ගලයෙකු ගෙන්න ගත්තා නොබෙල් සාම තාගලාබි යුනුස් මහත්තයා. දැන් එතුමා කාගෙන්ද දන්නවද අහන්නේ මොකද කරන්න කියලා. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා. අපිට අගයක් නැති වුණාට මේ රටේ කරේ මහ වික්‍රමයක්.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has officially removed 4 state ministers from their ministerial positions with immediate effect. Accordingly, State Minister of Ports and Aviation Services Premalal Jayasekara, State Minister of Power and Energy Indika Anuruddha, State Minister of Agriculture Mohan Priyadarshana De Silva and State Minister of Highways Siripala Gamlath have been removed from their respective positions with immediate effect. According to the President's Media Division, this decision was made under the authority granted to the President by Article 47(3)(a) of the Constitution. The Colombo bourse closed in red today as a result of price losses in counters such as Dialog Asiata, Melstercorp and Hemas Holdings, with the turnover crossing 1.4 billion rupees. The benchmark gold share index settled 0.33% lower at 10,801.18 points. The S&P Sri Lanka 20 also fell by 0.32% to close at 3,035.64 points. Trading volume on the index rose to 62.2 million shares from 43.6 million in the previous session. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while the banking sector came in second. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 32.6 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 1.47 billion rupees. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.